Hello, I'm Todd with Ben here. Welcome to Pilots React. Today, we are going to do an episode based on the Hawker 800 stall crash that just happened recently on October 16th. Let's give you guys a little preview of the ASN report. So pretty much it was an airplane from Mexico. They arrived in March and to maintenance at Duncan Aviation at Battle Creek. The registration is XA-JMR, Julian Mike Romeo, and unfortunately 3 people perished in this accident. It is quite unfortunate, as we'll get into in a second about why, because this is the second accident that happened within a year in identical conditions. All easily preventable with some knowledge, and that's the hard part. And it's not knowledge that you would think that it's coming from a pilot, but knowledge from the general public, the owners, the FAA, even Hawker. So in this one, this was the first flight, the test flight out of maintenance. So it's unfortunately what happens is when you go into maintenance and they remove part of the airplane, which is the leading edge of the airplane, they have to do all sorts of tests. And one of the tests they have to do is a stall test. In this case, it didn't work out very well. So let me first bring up some of the video.
Literally. Plane just fell from the sky. A plane just fell from the sky.
So in the first part of that video, you can't really see very well. It's just doing a spin right to the ground.
From the sky, literally.
Oof. So let me see if I can go do that one more time. It's not a lot of video on social media, just the aftermath. And you can just see it crashing. So
that was
what do you think
fully
about
developed
that?
spin?
Totally developed spin. And I have the audio as well. Now, the thing with the audio, they're from Mexico. And international pilots are generally, they have to be proficient in English. There's multiple times where they're trying to get their point across what they're trying to do. They're trying to request a block space of altitude between 14 and 16,000 to do stall practices. But because the communication is not their primary language, it was difficult for them to express that. It just went on for a long time before the ATC person, the air traffic controller, understood what they're requesting. I have that broken down, but I don't think that's pertinent at all to this. I just think it's unfortunate that they didn't communicate well, but it's not a testimony to their skill level, their ability, or anything else. So I'm going to pretty much just go past that. I'm sure people have heard that already, but we will listen to the entire accident.
X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland. X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland Center, stay altitude. X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland Center. X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland Center, how do you read? X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland Center.
I hate this as a pilot, just hearing this.
Yep.
X-ray Alpha Juliet Mike Romeo Cleveland Center.
Yeah.
Southwest 3149, can you look at your 1 o'clock and about 20 miles? We're looking for an aircraft. Do you see anything out there on the ground? Looking on the ground, Southwest 3149? Yeah, well, I think we had correction. Just look to see if you see anything out there, any smoke or anything like that for me, please. We're lost. We're looking. Nothing to say right now, but we'll look at something. Thanks. We just lost him on radar and can't get a hold of him right now. Let me know if you can see it. Yeah, we got a burning smoke almost at 1 o'clock long down low.
So that's pretty much that. I slowed down the audio where he says stall recovery. And he's even saying sorry at the moment in time because they're losing a lot of altitude. So if you take a look here for a second, let me make this a little larger. That's the ADS-B report. If you look towards the bottom, You can actually see the airspeed difference. They went from like 192 to 167 to 139 to 113 to 83. You can see the rates, the vertical speed rates, you know, a tiny bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down. And we don't have data after 527, just because they're now at 83 knots and the airplane's already stalled. So it's going down. Mm-hmm. So what's your take on any of that, Ben?
Well, they stalled a swept wing jet, which I'm not a jet pilot, but I've always heard stalling a swept wing jet is something very different than stalling a trainer or a straight wing airplane, whether it's a jet or reciprocating. I saw that they gained 800 feet in altitude, or they had a positive climb rate when they dropped below the stall. So could this have been an accelerated stall where they were too abrupt on it, and in that situation it developed into a spin, and they were, 15,000 feet, that should be any airplane you should be able to recover, but if it's a recoverable spin. But I know some aircraft, a fully developed spin is, like my airplane, the Grumman Tiger, is not certified for spins because it could go flat, and it very well might be unrecoverable. I think people have rode them in from over 10,000 feet trying to recover from a spin in a Grumman Tiger, which is a nice straight wing. So what do you think as someone familiar with jet aircraft?
That's an interesting question, Ben. So you have one side of the equation that's you do stalls in the sim. No matter what airplane you're in, you do stalls. And I flew a few different jets that have stalled differently. Like, for instance, the Falcons are the softest stalling aircraft ever. You just float them down. You know, not a lot of roll either way. It's a really nice stalling airplane. Others are a lot more abrupt, and if you have anything on the wings or any disruptive flow over the ailerons, you're going to crank that over into a spin. So I do have a video of a stall test being done in the Hawker from years ago. I picked this up on social media as well. Let's look at this for just a second, and I'll show you what I'm referring to. If you look here, they're straight and level, right? And you can see in the background the attitude, roughly where they are. You're going to see in a moment that they're going to dip down really quick. Say again?
Well, we saw the pitch up. They're holding about 5 degrees nose up. That looks like a buffet.
If I can make the volume a little bit louder.
They're holding the nose up. Oh,
yeah.
It looks like a little bit of a wing dip. Maybe not.
I have it in slow-mo on the actual stall. I'll show you in a second. I just want to show you how abrupt this happens. And they actually do a secondary accelerated stall, just like you were talking about. So you can start to hear things. You'll hear the stall warning, stick shaker in a second. And then you'll see the right, there we go, stick shaker.
Yep. And nose is way up.
Way up, yep. And then there it is, shaker, and should be probably a pusher. And look at that, almost 90 degrees, banking, and a secondary stick shaker there as well. And then they're pointed down. So, yeah. So a couple things here that I want to wrap my head around on all of this is, first, these guys I believe they were trained. If you have, a lot of people had secondary, first of all, the first issue is recognizing the stall. We've changed training from a long time ago from a lot of accidents that you and I, Ben, when we were offline, we're talking about one of the accidents. Now we have to say stall, stall, stall. You have to verbalize and recognize that it's a stall, because too many people weren't doing that, and the recommendation makes you go into action. And the first thing is actually breaking the stall, pushing down, depending on your configuration. You can also roll and let the nose drop off through the horizon. Also a lot safer in my opinion. But breaking the stall, allowing the airspeed to pick up, and then getting out of there. I've seen pilots, and generally we're not trained to do aerobatics. I thankfully have some upset recovery training. I thankfully have aerobatic training, but I've been in the sim where we've gotten in trouble, and it's a sim, so you're just sitting back, relaxing a bit. If you're not flying, you're just watching the other person trying to help. And I've seen people not be able to recover from things that should have been recoverable. And the only thing I can equate that with is their lack of training, specifically in stall spin recovery or upset training recovery. That's not generally what we do. We do that in our primary, categories in small light aircraft, but we don't generally put a jet airplane into a spin to see how it recovers in a simulator. It's not something we're taught. So I think that's a fundamental flaw in all of our training. That being said, I don't think, and this is going out generally, I don't think crews should be taking these jobs. This is a test pilot job. This is not a crew, not like myself. I'm hired as a person to go do a contract trip. I should not be doing this because it's way outside my envelope of normal operations. Unfortunately, I think a lot of operators are pressuring, even if it's self-induced, but pilots feel pressured into taking this job. So if they call me up, say, "Hey, Todd, we've got a trip for you in a Hawker, and I'm current on the Hawker, and I'm working for the company." I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" "Yeah, it's in maintenance. You got to pick it up and fly it out." I'm like, "Okay, what's that entail?" "Oh, we're going to do some stall tests." I would feel a little bit weird to say, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable doing that," but I need to. And if I lose my job, so be it, because I'm going to bring up in a second, I'm going to bring up something that shows you, it says a person must be trained in Hawker stall and spin recoveries. But let's look at this. Before we do that, I want to look at this in slow-mo, just so we really see this. There we go. And the wing drops right there, and almost 90 degrees, like close to 90, 80 degrees down. And you had a secondary stall, and now you're pointing downward towards now. Lovely.
Now, Todd, let me ask a question here. With the swept wing jet, I thought it can stall and it can maintain a nose high attitude unless you take deliberate action to bring your nose down. Is that true? Or it looked like that broke like a traditional, the nose just dropped a lot farther than I'm used to.
Yeah. So for me, honestly, I can't answer that aerodynamically speaking, because you have a lot of different jets that have different wings that are all swept. So you have Challengers, Falcons, Gulfstreams, and they all have different stall characteristics. So some are very soft. They don't break, they don't roll, but the Hawker actually says it can break, so you have to be careful. So personally, for me, I would treat all swept wing jets, cautiously, that as they all have the ability to roll on you. However, some like Challengers, they don't really roll very well. Lears, they don't really break well. Hawkers apparently were known to roll pretty well. I don't know if that answered your question, Ben, or not, but it's I'm not a factory test pilot,
Well, that's a good point. Most of us are not test pilots, and test pilots require a whole bunch of training on top of the primary training, secondary training, type training. So you make such a good point about regular flight crews being expected to do return to service flights and in effect become test pilots themselves.
That's exactly the issue. And if they decline it, they feel pressure from sometimes their charter company, or sometimes they're just contract pilots. But I know people who do this correctly, and they hire test pilots, factory test pilots, to do the return to service stall checks. So here, the stall test requirements, what they're saying here for the 800 XP and all these other series, that if a leading edge assembly was removed, which a lot of times the TKS wing panels, what they are, those are for ice, for de-icing, rather anti-icing. It drips glycol on parts of the wing. So if that's removed, which occasionally it is for large inspections as well as for corrosion issues, then you must do a series of stall tests. So that's the first thing that you have to understand. And in jets, it's not like a small airplane where you have, you have a little what do you call that? Stall indicator, that little L shape that's pushed up by airspeed that gives you the bell, stalling. We have what's a stick shaker first. So during a certain period of time, your shaker's giving you a buffet. So it's an artificial warning in a jet telling you you're about to stall. And if you don't listen to that artificial warning, the plane decides to take over for you, regardless of where you are. If you're 300 feet above the ground, it will push the nose down into the ground, deliberately so, to try to recover itself. It doesn't care about the ground at that moment. There's not a component saying, hey, you're too low to the ground. It's going to push it if you pull too far back on that stick. So let me take a look at this for a second. So this was required, obviously. And this is what the requirements that they had to meet. They had to be at an altitude above 10,000, minimum 15,000 feet, which they were. They were in VMC conditions. They configured everything correctly. Crew, at least one pilot is experienced in Hawker stall tests recommended. Non-standard recovery techniques may be needed for swept wing jets. So, and then to verify the stick pusher activation, it's also required in this condition when the TKS is removed, the panels. So they have to get right to stick shaker and stick pusher, and then they have to recover. So, Ben, honestly, if you asked me to do this, I would push back a bit. I would say, sir, I'm not a test pilot. I'm not, in whatever aircraft I'm doing it. And you're asking me to take an airplane up in the air and stall it deliberately. So have you given me upset recovery training? Have you given me flat spin recovery training? Have you given me anything? Have I gone through the factory to get some sort of requirement met to do this? Because I'm not qualified. That would be my best argument or defense, hopefully, being that they won't fire me after that. But that's the pressure we feel. We feel that if we say no to an assignment, we will be terminated. I wanted to show you something else here. There's also, this happened a year ago. And through another acquaintance of mine, they knew the pilot who this happened to a year ago. And we'll get into that just very briefly to touch on this. But that pilot was extremely, extremely experienced. And for this to happen to an extremely experienced pilot, not saying these guys aren't, it's just that we're not trained to do this. So you're putting people who are just a normal crew into a nice airplane that you just paid $350,000 to get fixed. Why not hire the appropriate crew? Why not call somebody else and have them do it? It just seems to make sense to me,
And these are $50 million jets.
This one is 2007 Hawker. That can range from 1.5 to like 6.1. Like, okay. It's really around the 4 to 5 million mark for this guy, for an old 2007 mark plane. They're not like G650. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to show you this is the old one. So this Hawker crash happened in February 2024, November 900 Victor Alpha. Same exact thing, same exact concept. They did the stall test. They stalled the airplane. It spun into the ground, and it used to look like this. Unfortunately, after that, it looked like that. So yeah, that was not again the same exact concept, So yeah, that's my take on everything. And I went on social media and I read something from one of the mechanics. And I'm going to just paraphrase what he wrote. He's been 5 years working on Hawkers. And he's like, anytime you had that happen, the leading TKS screens removed, they hired 2 professional Hawker test pilots. That's it. There's no if, ands, or but, 2 professionals to do it. And he's like, you only have a couple seconds to recover that before losing control of the airplane. So to me, I'm guessing that these guys worked for this airplane. There's a tail number that they worked for. And also, it was on the ground since March. So now we have 2 pilots that may or may not have been flying regularly, may or may not have been in the sim recently, and probably were not test pilots. And I just feel bad for them and their families because it's a situation they should not have been put into. Yeah.
Agreed. That's and now in this past incident, the similar incident with two fatalities, did the NTSB come out with a probable cause?
So they did on the original one, but they haven't finished the final report. So when we get that, we can bring it up and talk about it, but they haven't finished the final one. But it's going to be, I mean, it's very hard to say that this is not pilot error because, and understandably so. The only thing that could be different is if they switched some controls in the airplane when they took, that has happened when they took it, but that I don't know. I don't think that would have worked either. I think that it's just that we're not used to flying an airplane, on knife edge and dropping it down. Many times in the sim, it took me years to learn to go knife edge to lower the pressure on the wing, just to let the nose fall through the horizon before I recover. The hell with altitude, just get some airspeed over that wing again. And sometimes people pull back. Sometimes people don't know what to do. Sometimes they don't use rudder. Sometimes they use too much rudder. Sometimes they do cross-controlled aileron. Sometimes, as you heard, they'll do a secondary pull, get the secondary stick shaker with a secondary pusher. It becomes chaotic. And I've seen it in the sim become chaotic. You're sitting there like you. Say again?
You start fighting the airplane, or you start feeling the airplane is fighting you if you don't understand how it's going to react and what envelope of flight you're in. So exactly. Like you said, if your wing is stalled and you're at knife edge and you try and bank back to neutral without letting yourself fall through the horizon and build up speed, now you're in a spin. Like if you put in some aileron, contrary to your stalled bank, you're immediately in a spin. And my guess is that the whole idea of stall recovery is prior to entry into a spin. And if you enter into a spin, they probably don't have. Are there spin recovery techniques for a jet?
I've never seen anything for a jet per se, personally. And once again, I'm not a test pilot, but I'm sure test pilots go specifically to their aircraft. Like this one, I read somewhere that for the test pilots for this aircraft, they put a very, very forward CG for some reason. And I'm guessing it has to do with recovery in case they get into the worst case scenario. Yeah. They also have to have one of their center gas tanks empty as well for CG reasons as well. So that's one of the requirements they do for this test. But I've never seen a stall recovery for a specific jet, and I've never been a factory test pilot. But I have done lots of stalls and lots of spin training, both in simulators, deliberately so and accidentally so. I think, and I've seen people not be able to recover from them, depending on how much altitude you have, because I think it's an unusual attitude, and it's hard for them initially to see it without proper training. So I'm going to probably get off my soapbox here, but normal crews should not be doing these kinds of trips. And I think operators, more importantly, should understand and not put pressure on any normal crew to do these sorts of trips. This is a manufacturer test pilot trip only, in my opinion. And I'm hoping that goes out there to the general public as much as I can possibly promote it. Yeah.
Well, to the pilot public, turn down missions that are not, you are not 100% confident you can accept and complete safely. It's on us, on us as pilots, because the owners, the companies, they see the bottom line and they don't understand. They very well, it's a standard maintenance flight. These are standard pilots. They don't know. It's up to pilots to educate their companies.
Exactly. And generally, Ben, these are non-events. Generally, if everything goes right and all the parameters are met, you don't have a drop wing, you don't have a spin, generally speaking. But if you have contamination, like a little bit of ice on the wing or a little bit something else or something wrong or a control input that didn't go exactly the way you wanted to, it turns into a bad day that might not be recoverable. And if you're not trained for that, why even bother accepting the flight?
Yep.
And I think owners and I think everyone needs to be educated a bit on this, including myself. I think we all need to stand up a little bit more in the community and say, hey, this isn't appropriate.
Agreed. And condolences to the families of the crew and to the first responders.
Yeah. Okay, Ben, thank you very much. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon. Take care.